Oh. So I think everyone maybe knows Nish, but I'll do a brief introduction again so that people who don't know him, just very briefly. You've written a few books. You're an integral thinker, studied at University of Warwick, and you're going to mention in your discussion about meeting someone at the University of Warwick. So you've spoken at the Humanity Rising Global Summit, International World Unity Week Conference, and the International Science and Consciousness Conference. And you've written 2 novels and One Man's Search, and also, sorry, The Unity of Everything, a conversation with David Bohm. So this interview is about David Bohm and the Diamond Model. And I think most people are probably familiar with this book. I'm sure everyone is. Most people are. And so the last one we did actually was my experience with Krishnamurti and David Bohm, which was very interesting to talk about. Oh, someone is their mic on. Yeah, there's a bit of disturbance in the background. If someone could maybe mute, because there is some talking. Let me just see who it might be.
Yeah, it could be me, but I can't turn them off because it's just the members of the meeting.
Oh, I see.
Chatting, just chatting, and I'm
you
not
can't
sure
turn the volume down, Avdi?
Let me see if I know how to do it.
All right. Anyway, so the last time was Nish talking about his experience with Krishnamurti and David Bohm. And this time it's basically David Bohm and the Diamond Model specifically. So I've got a few questions to ask Nishad, and then that'll be for about half an hour. And then the last half an hour will be discussion, any questions you might have, and we can get into discussion. So the first question is quite an interesting one. It's how you became interested in comparative religion, which is quite a wide topic, but it would be interesting to hear for you what that was.
Okay, thank you, Gavin. So yeah, I'll give a little bit of background first of all. So I'm a 2nd generation immigrant. So my parents came from India, and I was brought up in a Hindu household. And of course, as I was living near London, the outside world was not predominantly Hindu. It was a Christian. So right from the start, I was, if you like, brought up in a dual culture. And I was always interested in, are these different religions? And later on, I read about Buddhism and Islam and Judaism. Do these different religions have something in common? Is there like a common message behind all of them? Since I was being exposed to 2, 3, 4 from a young age. And when I got to university, and I went to university to study mathematics. And at that point, my point of view kind of became postmodern. And at that point, I was very much interested in the sort of multiculturalism. And because of that, I also became interested in knowing is there a way that these religions can communicate with one another? Is there something that they have in common that could lead to some kind of understanding of an underlying unity, if that actually exists? And that led me to quite an obsessive seeking and an obsessive study of religions for many years.
So yes, and the next question is actually a very interesting one. I tried to look up what algebraic topology meant, and I couldn't like mention something at this point. So the question, what you're going to talk about is how you studied algebraic topology at Warwick with world-leading mathematician Colin Rourke, and how this led you into Bohm's implicate order theory. So maybe you'd like to say a bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So I did my degree in mathematics from the University of Warwick, and 2 of the subjects I studied there, one was called linear algebra and the other was called algebraic topology. And I was very fortunate because my personal tutor was a guy called Colin Rourke, who was one of the world leading researchers in algebraic topology. And topology basically is the study of spaces, 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional spaces. And because I'd already started becoming interested in Krishnamurti at this point, and because Krishnamurti was a common feature in our home. My father was a serious student of Krishnamurti. And Krishnamurti had many conversations with David Bohm, the scientist David Bohm. And what got me initially interested in David Bohm was that he had used these two subjects, linear algebra and algebraic topology, to develop what he called his theory of the implicate order. And that initially, through my mathematical studies, got me interested in David Bohm initially. And also because of the connection with Krishnamurti and the connection with spirituality that I was also developing in my own study. And that led me to studying David Bohm. And again, he became a major influence. I read a book called Wholeness and the Implicate Order, and that actually made a lot of sense to me and helped me a lot as I continued the study of religions. I felt Bohm was introducing concepts that could be very useful in finding or developing some kind of understanding of what this underlying unity of religions might actually be.
Oh, that's interesting. It makes me feel like I need to learn more about the ways of the different models of looking at spirituality. I know there's, obviously there are different models, and that's maybe for another time. So then it's interesting, you talk about an early morning yoga practice in 1989 when you actually saw the diamond model, or you said that you somehow saw it, and be interested to know what, how that came about in your own words.
Yeah, so alongside the academic study of religions that I was doing, I realized quite early on that spirituality wasn't a spectator sport. I was going to have to actually take up some kind of practice so that this becomes real for me, and not just words, not just theory. And so I took up quite a serious practice of yoga and meditation. I studied in London after university with the Shivananda Yoga Center in London, and I took up practices of Buddhist meditation, Theravada, and later Zen. And a few years after I left university in 1989, I used to have this crazy habit of getting up incredibly early in the morning and meditating for 2 or 3 hours in the morning at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. And during one of these meditation sessions, it was an early Sunday morning, sort of summer 1989. And during this meditation session, just in the mind's eye, somehow this diamond figure appeared. And I had no idea at that point what it signified. The color of the diamond was green stroke, greenish, yellowish diamond, and it just wouldn't go away. There was just this strong picture in my mind's eye of this diamond shape. I didn't know what it signified, but I suspected it probably signified something important. It was just turning up in this meditation session in this very strong way. So after the practice was over, I went to my desk and started drawing what I thought I'd seen in my mind's eye. And quite quickly, from that drawing and doodling and improvisation, this model emerged that has come to be known as the diamond model. And it showed a certain pattern that I came to believe quite quickly represented something that one could find as a commonality amongst the different traditions of the world. And not only that, but equally importantly in physics and in the kind of physics that David Bohm was developing and that I was reading and studying. And this has come to be known as the diamond model.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's obviously the concept of, well, obviously unity and even prior unity, and everything's interconnected, and that's been talked about in different ways, but it's an interesting area to consider for sure. You do have a few slides, Nishad, you'd like to present, I think, at this point, relative to the diamond model specifically.
Yes, I'll do that if that's okay. So this is how the diamond model actually started to take shape. So I'll just share a few slides very quickly. If you can just confirm that you can see that okay.
Yep.
Great. Let me, okay, there we go. So this is the basic structure of the diamond model that came out of that meditation session. So I'll take you through this very quickly, just a quick overview. 2 lines from the bottom, you can see a term there called multiplicity. Now, the way I'm using the term multiplicity there is...
At the moment, I think you need to scroll down because we just see the 4 slides on the left and just a title. So we don't see the first slide. Yeah.
Or maybe
Okay.
you want to share the slideshow.
Okay, let me try this again.
Okay.
Can you see anything better there?
It's still the title, and it's not yet the diamond model itself.
Okay.
And there's a little
now?
thing resumes.
Yeah, there is resume slideshow, but it's gone now.
Yeah.
Can you see it? Can you see it now?
It's just a title still. I don't know if you want to press enter or scroll down, but if you can scroll down.
Maybe just click on that second slide if you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Is that okay now?
Yep, that's it.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so this is the diamond model, and this is the basic structure of the diamond model. So if we look at just 2 lines from the bottom there, there's a term there called multiplicity. So what I mean there by multiplicity is that's the world of separate things and separate events in space-time that we normally perceive in our normal daily life. But just a world of separate parts. And one of the things that I was learning from all of my spiritual studies and practice, and especially the writings of David Bohm, is the notion and the experience that there is a wholeness that we don't normally perceive or see that lies beneath this world of multiplicity, which is what I have signified there by the whole, 2 lines up from multiplicity. And those are the 2 basic components of the model, the whole and multiplicity, the underlying unity and the world of difference. Now, one of the key insights I got from David Bohm's writings was that if the world of multiplicity, which is the world of separate parts that we normally perceive, is somehow divorced in our perception and experience from this underlying whole, then we fall into a way of looking at things that David Bohm referred to as fragmentation, a world of fragments. So when parts are divorced from their underlying whole, those parts become fragments in our perception. And also, I was also seeing in many of the spiritual traditions that there was an intermediate stage or intermediate level between wholeness and multiplicity. That was what the spiritual traditions referred to as the subtle level, a level of archetypes, where forms start to emerge out of the whole, but haven't yet crystallized into the gross forms that we see in multiplicity. And it is at this level of the subtle level, that we create our sense of separate self, or we begin to create our sense of separate self. And we create a dualism there between the subject and the object, between me and everything that's not me. And that initial difference, or that primary dualism, proliferates into this world of multiplicity in which we normally live. And at the deepest level of realization, wholeness and multiplicity are not really separated from one another. They're 2 halves of the same coin. There is an underlying non-duality that exists between the whole and multiplicity, which you can see at the top of the model there. And the process whereby the whole becomes multiplicity via this subject-object differentiation and has the potential to fall into fragmentation is a process that I'm referring to there as creation, or some traditions, they call it manifestation or involution. And the reverse process whereby fragmentation can be healed and multiplicity can find its way back into wholeness and even non-duality, we can refer to that as evolution. And so there is a cycle of creation and evolution that's constantly going on and constantly in motion. So that's the essential diamond model that I was developing. And I'll very quickly show you how it applies to the work of David Bohm in the next slide. So here you can see the diamond model applied to David Bohm's work using the terminology that David Bohm was using. So David Bohm referred to that underlying wholeness as the implicate order and multiplicity as the explicate order. And the intermediate separation or primary dualism, he referred to as the realms of mind and matter, or consciousness and energy. And he referred to these as two relatively autonomous subtotalities that emerge out of this underlying totality, which is the implicate order. And then through an interaction between consciousness and matter, we generate our perception and experience of the explicate order, that is the world of separate things in which we live. And when our experience of the explicate order is divorced from some kind of being in touch somehow with the implicate order, we can fall into fragmentation. And so there's a process of emergence whereby the implicate becomes the explicate, and a process of dissolution whereby the explicate is reabsorbed back into the implicate. And David Bohm visualized this as happening in each moment. And as that happens in each moment, both the implicate and the explicate evolve together. And very quickly, because I initially started looking at this through the religious traditions, I'll just give you two quick examples of how this same pattern can be seen in two major religious traditions, one from the East and one from the West. So that's the diamond model applied to Hinduism. We have the underlying wholeness, which is often personified as a personal god, which is referred to as Ishvara. Ishvara separates, apparently separates, into this primary dualism of the male and the female, or the Shiva and the Shakti. And the interplay of Shiva and Shakti generates our world of Leela. And when that world is multiplicity, not losing contact with Ishvara, it's the play of God, Leela. But when Leela loses touch with the underlying whole, it falls into Maya, which is the world of illusion. And underlying both Ishvara and Leela, we have the non-dual reality, which is Brahman. And we have a process of involution, whereby Ishvara manifests as Leela and maybe Maya, and evolution, whereby whereby Maya is healed and Leela is returns back to its original source in Ishvara. And an equivalent there in Christianity. So the realm of wholeness I'm seeing here is mythologically represented by the notion of heaven. So heaven is the realm of wholeness, and earth is the realm of multiplicity, the realm in which we live. There's a primary dualism between the subject and the object, or between mind and matter, which in Christian thinking is referred to as the soul and the body. And the soul and the body both incarnate together onto earth, the world of multiplicity. And when earth loses touch with heaven, which is mythologized in the story of Adam and Eve, then the earth, creation, and humanity fall into sin. Sin there being the equivalent of fragmentation. And God, and especially what the Christian mystics might refer to as the Godhead, is the union of heaven and earth. And again, mythologically, this is represented by the end of time, when heaven and earth will come together and everything will be reunited with God, the non-dual reality. So this is very briefly the diamond model, how it applied to the work of David Bohm and to a couple of traditions there.
Thank you. That's all very interesting. And I can't help thinking it's the process of descent or separation, and how that occurs in each tradition, and how that even applies to us as individuals in the world. It's a whole nother level of conversation, but I do find that very interesting, that presumption of separation, or the act of separation, or the religious process of separation, however it's looked at, is, I think, maybe a topic for another time. But just to continue with the So yeah, so then you sent your paper to David Bohm, not expecting anything to come back. You say this quite clearly in your book, and you're very surprised or maybe shocked that he actually gives you a ring. So perhaps you could just say something about that.
Yeah, so what I thought I should do is write a paper on this. So I ended up writing quite a long paper, about 80 pages, on the diamond model, exactly what each part of it means. And then I looked at equivalences in 6 or 7 traditions, 6 or 7 spiritual teachers, and just tried to argue that this is a pattern that we see recurring everywhere. It's like a fractal that seems to exist in many different contexts. And then, because David Bohm had been one of the thinkers that had inspired this whole investigation, I sent him this paper, and really not expecting to hear anything. And a couple of months later, I was quite shocked to receive a phone call from David Bohm at home. At first, I thought it was some friend playing a prank, but it did turn out to be David Bohm. And he invited me to have a talk with him, having a discussion with him about this model, particularly how it applies to his work at Birkbeck College, London, where he was professor. And that conversation did take place in January 1991. And that conversation, I recorded it, and my friend David King transcribed it all.
And then you say 27 years later, your wife Shilpa finds a transcript and asks you if you still want it.
Yeah. So the transcript from this conversation with this incredible man basically just sat on my bookshelf for about 26, 27 years. It was just there, along with all the rest of the huge amounts of nonsense in my study. And in 2017, early 2018, my wife is actually just clearing out my study and finds this transcript and brings it down and asks me, do I still need this, or can she throw it away? And so I said, well, let me have a look at it first before you throw it away. And then I sat down, realized what it was, started reading it, and then thought, oh, hang on a minute, maybe this is actually something quite special. I really shouldn't throw this away, and I'm glad she asked. And it occurred to me that maybe I should actually publish this, because it's a long time has passed since David Bohm has passed away. I think he passed away in 1992. And there may be people out there who will find this interesting. And that's how I sent it to a publisher in Hamburg in Germany called Tradition. They published it, and it was published in 2018.
And it's got some good feedback, hasn't it? I know you've mentioned before, but who's responded? I mean, specifically to the book. I think there's been some good testimonials, isn't there?
Yeah, the books did get some quite a good response, and yeah. But really it became more well known because a chap called Peter Merry, who I didn't know at the time, read the book and contacted me and asked if I'd be willing to have a dialogue or a series of dialogues with him about the book, because he was looking into Bohm and Krishnamurti himself at that point. And that led to a series of 6 dialogues, which are all on YouTube still. And because of that, gradually the book and the model became better known. And I've ended up talking about the diamond model at a variety of conferences now, including Humanity Rising, World Unity Week, and most recently the Science and Consciousness Conference in Skipton. And it's recently also come to the attention of a lady in America who's going to be interviewing me next month as well too. So so through this series of strange events, this diamond model seems to have got quite an audience.
There's a sort of there was a deeper process going on, it seems like, from the emergence of the diamond itself. Who knows what was going on, but it's
strange how things work. But also what's actually even more interesting is that a number of people in very different fields, not connected with religion, which is what originally inspired me to download this diamond model, have come forward because they've found interesting applications in their own work. So I've had people contacting me about the diamond model who are artists and painters. I've had a microbiologist from Europe who's seen applications in her work in genetics and microbiology.
Wow.
A United Nations NGO was interested in the diamond model and how it could apply to creating peace and understanding between nations. There's people from the business world. There's a lady who does.
You need to get this book out more then. So it's doing some
design,
good stuff.
who's engaged in city design.
Yeah.
And I've got a friend who's now doing a master's and a PhD in physics using the diamond model.
Right.
So it seems to have found this very common
Wonderful.
application. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you so much. And I think this is the time where we can start just asking any questions, you know, if we've got any comments, getting into some kind of dialogue or discussion about any aspect of what Nish has talked about. I mean, one question just came up for me. Are there any, as far as you know, any similar models or any models that you know of that are somehow similar to what you've done? Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually just jotted down some quick notes. This is my first exposure to the diamond model per se, but it does remind one of something I found many years ago in the Dornhorst Testament, which may be familiar to some of us, which is the Cosmic Mandala, which is portrayed as this circular or spherical representation. And I was trying to correlate the two models just to try to make it a little easier to remember, if not more than that, that perhaps the highest level, the Brahman or Brahma God level of it might be that white star, the central star. And then I have Ishvara or heaven correlating with the blue field immediately surrounding that very star. And then the Shiva and Shakti are and I don't know which is which, maybe Shiva is the silver ring and Shakti being the indigo or blackish ring. And then the yellow being the level of Lila or earth, which in Adida's description corresponds to the mental, somewhat more subtle realm of our earth realm. If you think of it in terms of planes of existence. And then the red being the Maya, or perhaps the grossest level, that what in another of the slides was portrayed as the world of sin or separateness. So that was one thing that sort of rang true for me. And then you mentioned the fractals, and that of course reminded me of chaos theory and the Mandelbrot set, which of course is a mathematical construct based on imaginary numbers, the square roots of negative numbers and so forth, and how an algorithm run really countless times keeps creating a recurring pattern depending on the input. And another thing, and this brought up a lot for me, as you can tell, was the vortex-based mathematics presented by Marco Rodin, which is kind of akin to numerology and so forth, and is also about creating a unity of religion. Marco is a Baha'i and found his inspiration through the teachings of the Baha'i lineage, and also had a similar kind of sudden kind of revelation of seeing how this works at a fairly young age. I think he said he was 15 when he was house sitting one time. Anyway, that's what I have.
Yeah,
thank you, Martin.
Thank you. I'll just say yes. I think the Cosmic Mandala, definitely there would be a correlation, because the star in the middle, if you like, is the divine, which might correspond to either the whole or the non-dual. And as we move out into the outer circles, that would correspond to descending down from the non-dual to the whole, to subject-object, to multiplicity, to fragmentation. So that kind of ascent-descent that we see in the Cosmic Mandala of Adida, there would certainly be a correlation between that and the diamond model, yes. So thank you for that.
Getting some messages in the chat. It's quite active. Maybe I can just HSD. I'm not quite. Hang on. Maybe someone can say out loud if they've got a question. I'm not quite sure what the chat's referring to, but that's up to you if you want to say something from the chat.
Thank you. Well, I'll put a link to the HSD in here, but I think Alice has her hand up for a question.
Oh, sorry. Okay, good. Yeah.
Hello, I'm new here. My
Hi.
name's Alice.
Hi.
Just to give you a bit of background, hello Nish.
Hi.
I work as a CBT therapist here in the UK. I'm also an artist, so I'm in my art studio at the moment. So I'm a sort of spiritually interested person who wishes she knew more about physics as well. But one of the things that came up when you were showing the comparative models, I thought, well, it would be interesting to look at a psychological model as well of this, because, you know, one of the things that I think most psychological therapies aim towards is psychological integration, you know, trying to find that unity of the self. And, you know, most psychological distress is the sort of disunity and fragmentation of different parts. And so I was sort of thinking, how would I represent this in a psychological model? And then I thought, well, would a psychological model track onto what we see in physics? And one of the things that worries me a lot about physics is the idea that actually our universe is expanding at an accelerating rate, and that the connections between things are becoming less unified, less, you know, that eventually, you know, through entropy, everything will, you know, descend into chaos, and, well, not chaos, but disunity. And so it made me wonder, you know, what is it? Is there something in the law of nature which necessitates the backwards process from fragmentation back to unity? Or is it just that we feel that's psychologically necessary? So that's my question, basically.
Well, great, thanks, Alice. I'll try my best. Yes, definitely. I think the diamond model can be applied to the field of psychology, and many of the psychological problems or issues that people have could be seen as some form of fragmentation. And the aim of therapy, or it would be psychological wholeness or integration, as you say, which would be a movement from fragmentation back up to multiplicity. And once we're at the level of multiplicity, we've regained that connection with the whole again. And then, you know, that's what we would refer to as health, psychologically speaking. Yeah. Can you remind me what the second part of your question was? You were talking about the expansion of the universe, and you were worried about the movement towards disunity that physics is talking about there.
Yeah, so the idea that actually, you know, the stars and galaxies are becoming more and more dispersed away from each other at an accelerating rate. So the idea that there would still be enough energy in the universe to allow for consciousness to happen seems very unlikely, according to that model of the universe, as I've sort of understood it. Maybe, you know, there is a different model of the universe that we haven't quite reached, or we haven't quite appreciated. But the second part of my question is there a law in nature which necessitates the return from fragmentation to non-dualism or non-duality? Why doesn't everything just remain fragmented? Why doesn't everything just become more and more fragmented? Is my question.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Okay, so the expansion of the universe into, you know, greater and greater fragments or greater and greater disunity. The way I would see that, what's happening to the physical universe, when mapped onto the diamond model is that all of that is happening at the level of multiplicity. The manifest universe, what physics studies in terms of things that we can actually see in space and in time, that whole three-dimensional world of space-time corresponds to multiplicity. So even if the universe, the physical universe, comes to an end at some point one day, which it will, according to current models, that doesn't affect the underlying wholeness, because the underlying wholeness is not at a manifest level. That's an unmanifest, unseen, implicate order that is not affected by whether the universe exists or not. The universe itself is multiplicity.
I see. So I'm only seeing it as its manifest.
Yes, exactly. So it's that realm of multiplicity that's expanding and splintering and will one day come to an end. That underlying wholeness will never be touched and cannot be touched, because it doesn't exist at the manifest realm. And that's why the spiritual traditions talk about that wholeness, that underlying hidden wholeness, as being where we have to ultimately find our true identity and home, because then that inevitable decay and death and destruction that's going to happen at the manifest world, we've gone beyond that. That doesn't really touch us anymore, because we've found a level of identity and realization that is beyond the manifest world. That's how the Eastern traditions certainly will talk about that. Your second question, is the movement back from fragmentation to multiplicity to unity inevitable? The fall from multiplicity to fragmentation, if we just look at that bit, that is a movement that happens in the human psyche. The multiplicity to fragmentation, that fall isn't something that's happening in the physical world. The physical world around us remains at the level of multiplicity, because at a physical level, it's always connected to that underlying wholeness. It's in the human mind, in the human perception, that we forget that underlying wholeness and fall from multiplicity down into fragmentation. So is that movement back from fragmentation to multiplicity inevitable? Oh, well, I would say no, it's not inevitable that human beings are going to heal from this. It's quite possible that human beings will remain fragmented. There's no guarantee we're going to heal and move back to a healthy wholeness multiplicity dynamic, which is ideally where we should be. As for the physical universe of multiplicity, is it inevitable that will go back to unity? Well, there I would say yes, because that's not dependent on human perception or human action. That's just part of the way the physics will work. Unity will manifest as multiplicity, and as you said earlier, eventually the universe will splinter and disintegrate and come to an end, and we can think of that as multiplicity going back into unity until the next cycle begins and unity becomes multiplicity again.
Wow, that's a very powerful idea. Thank you, Nish.
Thank you. I hope that goes some way to answering what you asked, but thank you for excellent questions. Thank you.
Yeah, really good. Surya, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I think that the diamond model seems really interesting, and it seems that it can be applied with a lot of different kind of things. But I think really a lot of it is very point of view. It comes from point of view, and obviously it is very subjective, which I don't think it gets to the understanding of consciousness as being everything arising within consciousness. So that, for me, Adidar has taught me that obviously consciousness pervades everything, and there is this prior unity. So these questions of fragmentation and things like that don't really come up so much. I think it kind of pulls me into a really kind of split kind of mind of thinking about different things, really, in some ways.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you said that you talked about point of view and the subjective nature of the model. Well, I think that's correct. I think the diamond model itself will change and morph depending on our own subjective point of view. So,
Right.
that's why I say that the diamond is a fractal. It's not fixed in its current form. That's just the form that I came up with, given my own subjective point of view. As people at different levels of development or different backgrounds may well construct that diamond model or see it in very different ways.
Sure.
Adida's teaching about everything arising in consciousness and the prior unity, that prior consciousness, that prior unity in which everything arises, would correspond to what I'm referring to as that underlying wholeness. So that wholeness is that prior unity, out of which or in which the subject-object dualism arises. So the subject-object dualism would be the self-contraction, what Adida calls the self-contraction.
Right.
And that self-contraction generates a perception of a world made up of separate things. And eventually that leads to all kinds of conflicts and difficulties, internal and external, because of this illusion of separateness, which we are constantly creating. But even while all of that's going on, that prior unity, which is the wholeness in the diamond model, is not affected. So that's the consciousness that remains unaffected, even when all of these other phenomena are arising within consciousness.
Right. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. Thank you. Some really good questions.
Yeah. I think the question from Martin.
Okay.
If you don't mind, I was looking at the diamond model with respect to the what you might call the Hindu Trinity. The Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, Shakti. That set, and that one aspect in that diagram was the Ishvara, but there's a counterpart to Ishvara, the Ishta, which relates more to the incarnation of a spiritual master such as Adida Samaraj, which even at one point called his way of bhakti yoga Ishtaguru Bhakti Yoga. So I just wanted to, it may be academic, but it did seem like something that might be added, at least in the commentary.
And I think Ishtaguru is found in different paths as well, that you have your Ishtaguru, I guess, your chosen guru. So I guess that relates to that as well.
Yeah, I mean, traditions that would advocate the notion of the Ishtaguru, on the diamond model, that would be a case of somebody who's realized wholeness and is able to manifest or transmit that realization of wholeness within the realm of multiplicity. So in the diamond,
I put that next to the lila in the diagram. You know.
So in the diagram, think of there being an arrow that goes down from wholeness down to multiplicity. And that arrow would represent what the traditions would refer to as the incarnation or the function of the avatar. That the wholeness makes itself known within multiplicity in order to help liberate the world from fragmentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, of course. Please do.
Nish, hi.
Hi.
Basically, the way I see it here is that you are trying to bridge this fraction between the traditions, all traditions, spiritual world with the secular world, so-called scientific approach to life, that the tight throat that has been existing with this communication between these two sides. And I believe this is very good work you would be to try to open this tight throat and to communicate more and to bring this old traditional teachings, which you have made a sketch. I see this as a sketch, this diamond of this underlying, as you say, meeting point from all different traditions, same blueprint kind of that exists. Yes. And making simplifying probably for the public and for the secular world and then to bridge this and to make more connection, more communication, and hopefully to, as you say, to pacify this kind of opposition between these two extremes, in a sense. Well, two sides, because all these things are well known for thousands of years. All this teaching, you're just pointing out more to this common thread between all these things and clarifying to the. This is all needed just for the secular world, so-called scientific approach of things. And yeah, I salute you for this work. I think it would help, this bridging, this connection. So yeah, well done for that.
Well, thank you very much. Yes. Well, I mean, I'm sure everybody on this call is just very concerned about the fragmentation that I see in the world. Between religions, between religion and science, between different political views. And if it's possible to find something that can show a commonality between things, like, and the diamond model is just one example of many different ways that we might be able to do that, then that may at the very least get some kind of dialogue going between different perspectives to try to move towards, well, maybe we're not as different as we thought we were. Maybe there is some deep meeting point here.
That's right. Yeah, that's very, very so important. I mean, to me and to lots of people it's so simple, so obvious. But unfortunately, the world is still arguing up and down and going. It's like the elephant is in the middle of the room, but they still keep going and touching small parts and say, "Oh no, this, that." So yeah, this I believe this is a great contribution. Hopefully, it will be contributing to coming closer, as you say, this communality. Very, very well needed, of course, because the world is on fire, and it's urgency to contribute as much as everybody, So yeah, I'm impressed with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So it's 10 to 7. I guess we can go. The plan is to go until 7 o'clock. So we've got another sort of 10 minutes really for any further discussion. And Surya says the wholeness part is really the only part needed. All the rest is point of view, which is, it's interesting. I mean, the point of view term is used in Adidam in terms of it's presuming to be separate, and that presumption or the activity of separation is what's called point of view in the midst of infinite radiance. And so the wholeness, obviously, to connect to that seems fundamental. However, we do that personally through consideration, and maybe we're moved by the sacred in whatever way that is for someone, but it feels fundamental at this time that we find that connection, that genuine connection to the sacred, because it's so utterly, I've always felt it's so needed that we live for a sane life in the midst of this terrible time. So yeah, it's just my few pennies on that.
Yes, the wholeness is fundamental, but we do have to live in the world of parts. So that's why even though the rest is point of view, we are still living in a world of points of view. And that's why I think the model has to embrace both the whole and the multiplicity as well.
I'm not sure, Martin, if your hand has been up since before or if it's a new hand up.
Yeah, sorry, I just forgot.
Okay, no worries.
I just wonder, because about Krishnamurti, part of it, Nish is obviously very familiar with his teaching or whatever work. And in my view, I'm convinced it's very significant. And basically he has kind of explained the fundamentals, at least, and sorts of things. So somehow, I don't think we are sort of scarce in sources of knowledge. It's just about implementation and maybe, communication. Knowledge is there, Adidam, Krishnamurti, others, everything is there. It's just about bringing this wealth of refreshment to the world, this bridge, this connection, this pouring to we basically feeding the world with that, refreshing and revitalizing the world and communication. That's the only problem I see here, the main problem. Basically, the knowledge is there already. It's been there for forever.
Oh, yes, I agree. There's been, numerous great spiritual teachers and traditions that have brought this knowledge. And I think because we now live in a global village, really, which perhaps we didn't 200 years ago or 500 years ago, it's that much more imperative now that the traditions and teachers and different disciplines like science and art and politics find a way to talk with one another and to realize that actually they're all just different perspectives on that same underlying truth.
Yes.
And
So,
that's what's motivating me to do this.
Yeah, that's right. No, it's a good ring in the chain of things to tackle and to work on it and to widen this flow, because the communication now is possible now. The access is much easier. So why not use it?
Exactly.
So technology can play a part here.
I think 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, we lived in our little local places and we could ignore other traditions and other teachers. We can't ignore that now anymore.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we never heard, for lots of them, we never heard. They never heard, for example, just local. Now you can see everything. So yeah, of course it should, you shouldn't be ignored anymore. It should be worked, really. So yeah, you are in the right spot. You are hitting in the right spot at the moment. So hopefully more of us to contribute.
Thank you very much.
So I think next, Nish, do you want to say maybe what's going to happen next time? I mean, people have already touched on Adidar, and I know we were talking about maybe your experience. Maybe for next time, you would talk about his influence in your work, and you obviously mentioned him in the unity of everything. Is that something you still would like to do for next time?
I think that would be a good way to go next time. I mean, last time we spoke about Krishnamurti, and now we're talking about David Bohm and the diamond model. Now, Adidar is another major teacher who I think has had a big influence on both of us and on many of the people who are coming to these calls. So I think what Gavin and I are planning is that our next meeting in another 3 to 4 weeks, we'll be talking about Adidar and about initially my experience, how I discovered Adidar's teachings and the influence that they had on me. And then perhaps in the following session, Gavin will be talking about his own life as a devotee of Adidar, as Gavin is a formal devotee of Adidar.
Sure, yeah, that would be great.
And we'll find ways that can help us to go into these same considerations in a different context and perhaps in greater depth.
Right.
Wonderful. So I guess, are we saying next in 3 weeks' time, Nish?
3 to 4 weeks' time. We'll fix
3
up
to
the
4 weeks,
dates.
Okay. Okay, great.
Putting these together.
Yeah, it's been really wonderful to listen to everyone's input.
Any final questions from the chat or from anybody here before we close the meeting?
Alice Gee, thank you. That was so interesting. Oh yeah, nice one, Alice.
Yeah, and thank you, Alice, for your question.
Yeah, really.
It was a really good question. Thank you. All of the questions that have been asked today have been great. Thank you.
So all we need to do, the homework, is to know about algebraic topology for next time.
Yeah. There will be an algebraic topology exam next time, so come prepared.
I won't need 4 weeks. 3 will be fine.
Oh my goodness.
Three's enough.
Wow. Wow. I mean, I can't. Anyway, sorry, my mind was going to go somewhere, but yeah.
Into
Cool, so-
multiplicity or fragmentation, Gavin?
It was fragmentation,
No, yeah.
definitely. Well, I'm thinking it was, yes. Yes, it was. So, yeah, so thank you. Well, I mean, there's no timer saying we have to stop, but I guess people might want to stop at 7, but there's no timer saying you've got 3 minutes left or anything, as far as I can tell.
No, there's no time limit here. So if people do want to hang around and ask any further questions, they're very welcome to do that.
It's just nice to be together with people, if I'm honest. You know, it's like it's easy to be in one's own flat kind of thing. So it's to see other people and to chat is wonderful. Yeah.
Janish.
Hi, Susan.
Wow. Hello.
Was that one of yours, Marie?
Yeah, definitely likes to make herself known.
She didn't like the diamond model?
Oh, no. That's just a punctual, that's just an exclamation point on something.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure what, but I just want to, I feel like surfacing, I don't know the intent and direction of all these, but Marie and I have seen the diamond model in a variety of contexts, including an integral one of some of your talks with Kai of the diamond model being able to derive the 4 quadrants of integral theory, the spiral dynamic levels, and there's a beautiful symmetry to it that's just it constantly reveals new possibilities, it feels like to me, and it sits, you know, it's like any good theory that brings together lots of different observations from different points of view and pulls them, and it reminds me of in a different context, somebody who's a really great software developer was asked what great software code looks like, and he thought about it for a minute. He said, about what you'd think. And the guy was like, what? It's just about what you know, and that's, you know, when you see something that's really beautifully simple and there's truth in it, it looks like you don't realize how brilliant it is on a certain level, because it looks like what you'd think. It reflects somehow us in a simplistic or a simple, not simplistic, simple way. So.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I think one of the reasons the diamond model is finding so many different applications is because it's getting to very, very fundamental notions, perhaps notions beyond which there's nothing more fundamental. Wholeness, multiplicity, the subject, the object. I mean, what's more fundamental than that?
Yeah.
And if you can find or hit that most fundamental of all patterns, then almost by the very nature of things, you're going to find that almost anywhere you look. So you can move to any domain of inquiry and see and ask yourself, well, what might be the diamond in this context? And what I'm finding so far is there's virtually nowhere where some kind of wholeness, multiplicity, subject, object, pattern, fragmentation, non-duality doesn't apply, which makes me think this is a very fundamental fractal that's just appearing everywhere, generating itself in different contexts all over the place.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Nish, you feel it. I mean, I know we're talking about it and it's on a 2-dimensional paper, but I think what's beautiful is that we're feeling it all. That's how we're able to relate around it. Yeah.
Yes.
I know that emerged from you for that reason.
Well, yes, thank you. And one of the things I'm interested in developing as well is how can we build simple meditation practices or self-inquiry practices based on the diamond model? Can we use the diamond as a mandala for meditation? Can we move around the different parts of the diamond and feel how those aspects of the diamond are manifesting in our being at that moment? So can you locate your own fragmentation right now? Can you locate how you're creating your subject as opposed to the object? Can you get in touch with wholeness right now? And that's the direction I would like to move in. All this theoretical stuff is brilliant, but I'd like to also find some kind of spiritual practice or meditation practice that could emerge from this diamond mandala, as I'm thinking of it now.
Oh, sorry. Yes, Susan.
As you're saying that, I'm sorry to interrupt. As you're saying that, Nishad, I'm reminded of someone who uses the medicine wheel astrologically, embodied astrology, where they, in that case, they're laying out signs or archetypes. But it's essentially a medicine wheel. But I'm wondering, I could see a diamond model where each facet of the model is in the wheel, and in the center of the wheel, you're focusing on whatever aspect you're working on, but you have the whole group represented that way. So the energetics of the wheel, the toroidal energy, is present, and that way it could also be a group practice.
Yes, yes. That's something, yeah, definitely I'd be interested in talking about and working on. Yeah, thank you.
Surya, you said you had a question in the chat and your hand's up.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just wondering, how close is the diamond model, would you say, to Ken Wilber's integral theory type model? Obviously, without going into it too much. But,
I think it's related, and there are two ways that immediately come to me that the diamond is related to Ken Wilber's integral theory. First of all, I think that it's possible to generate Wilber's 4 quadrants from this diamond. So if you think of the diamond as wholeness, multiplicity, that's vertical, and subject object is horizontal, then there are 4 different ways in which these components of the diamond can interact with one another. And each of those 4 different ways generates one of the 4 quadrants. So you can think of the 4 quadrants, and really, I'll prepare a diagram for this for a future session, but the 4 quadrants can be seen to emerge within that diamond. Think of it as the one and the many, and the interior and the exterior. It's exactly the same principle: wholeness, multiplicity, subject, object. So I think it's related to the quadrants in that way. And as far as the levels are concerned, I think the diamond takes different forms at every level of development. So if we use Wilber's terminology of archaic, magic, mythic, rational, so on, at the archaic level, the diamond would take a certain form. As you move to the magic level, it will take a different form. And the shape would be the same, but the wholeness, multiplicity, subject, object would have different manifestations at each level. Same at mythic, same at rational, and so on. And also, what I think would happen, and I'd need to elaborate this in more detail, is that what is the wholeness at one level would become the multiplicity at the next level. So what is wholeness at age would become multiplicity at archaic would become multiplicity at magic, and what is wholeness at magic would become multiplicity at mythic, and so on. So these are the 2 connections I see. So the diamond can generate the quadrants, and the diamond can also model how we move to larger and larger holons as we ascend these levels of development. So yeah, there's a close connection. With
yeah, I thought there might be. Yeah, obviously, this is called the integral theory as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
And could I just bring into that same question and answer? Michael put a comment in the chat about another way that he sees the diamond model and integral. Michael, do you want to read it, or should I? Okay. Michael says, when I first saw it, I thought of the diamond model as a map of what Ken Wilber calls waking up. And what you're talking about and what you were just describing there, Nish, brings in growing up and showing up.
Yes, I think you'll find a diamond in all of those contexts. So you can look at the diamond in the context of waking up. So the different aspects of the diamond would be different states of consciousness as we move towards non-duality. So multiplicity could be like the psychic state or nature mysticism. Subject object would be subtle mysticism, theistic mysticism. Wholeness would be causal mysticism, formless mysticism, and non-dual would be, non-dual realization. So they can represent states, but they can also represent stages as well. So the diamond morphs into whichever context you want to put it. So put it in the waking up context, it models waking up. Put it into the growing up context, it models growing up, and so on.
Right. More affirmation of its centrality or its meta quality or its essence quality or something that it can map those different things together.
Yeah. And I'm sure the same could be done with showing up and cleaning up and these other terms that Ken Wilber uses. Yeah.
Doshin Roshi has fucking up.
Yeah, that'll be next time. The diamond model and how to fuck up.
Well, I am thinking time now. I don't know, how long do we could go for another 5 minutes or something? Is that all right? Because I realize I've actually, having said what I said, I probably do need to go fairly soon.
Yeah, let's do another 5 minutes and then call it a day, quarter past 7.
Okay.
I'm really grateful for the interest here. Thank you. I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, well, maybe just as an epilogue or an addendum to the end of this conversation for today, that at some point, as you know, Maya is incomprehensible. It just goes into a kind of like all the points in space-time are pointing toward all the other points, and there's no frame of reference that is the ultimate point of view, to coin a phrase. And so ultimately this is frustrated and becomes a kind of just a kind of a wordless or silent acceptance of reality as it is. And it really is just a divine gift. There's a tendency to want to engineer a path of return and take heaven by storm, like I'm going to make myself God. So
rather than the mystery of existence, like that you can't fix on anything, and that intuition of nothingness and mystery is the wholeness, is the source, which is present in one. That's one way to look at it, I think, is what you're saying.
Right, and ultimately we get ripped apart. I mean, even if we did have a working model, we're going to lose it.
Well, I mean, I agree, and I think models like the diamond model have to be held very lightly. There's no claim being made here that this is the way it is. This is just one particular take that has occurred to one particular person, and it'll like all other models, this model will also one day become irrelevant and be burnt up and thrown in the dustbin, because ultimately we're dealing with mystery. But while we live in the world, we have to communicate and think and navigate our way. So models have a relative use. The danger is if we give them any kind of absolute status, and that it is a danger we all have to be aware of. But as I hold the diamond model very, very tentatively. It's useful, but at the end of the day, it's only a model, and no amount of study of the diamond model is going to awaken you. Awakening will go beyond this and every other model as well.
I agree.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Nish, for your honest, your openness, basically, in the whole consideration. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, it's been wonderful. A learning curve for me. It continues to be a learning curve, and long may that continue. So maybe we have to part. Maybe
I'll just say thank you to everybody. Thank you all very much for coming, and I hope that you can make it next time, 3 to 4 weeks from now. If any of you I don't have any connection or contact with you, I'm on Facebook, so feel free to send me a friend request if you want to make a connection.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking, like Alice, I guess you contact it through our Facebook page. I think it's called Nish and Gavin Life and Awakening or something like that. So you can leave them. Yeah, the next event will be up there anyway. So yeah. Thank you, Surya, and thanks everyone for your contributions.
Thanks. It was very good. Very interesting.
Thank you all very much. Thanks. So hi, Josh.
Thank you.
Yeah, looking forward to the Adidar talk. That'll be good. That'll be interesting.
Yeah, great. See you all soon.
See you later. Have a nice evening.
Wait a second. I got to make sure I got to get that link that Susan put in. I'm sorry. Just 1 second. Let me click on
sure. Before we close.
Thank you.
There's a single event.
I'm sorry. Thank you. I would have lost that. All right. Have a lovely afternoon.
Thank you. You too.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.